The wind howled through the frozen Montana forest, sharp as a blade and cold enough to steal breath. Clara stumbled through the thick snow, her worn shoes soaked, her fingers raw and bleeding. Her thin shawl did nothing against the blizzard, but she kept moving, one step, then another, as if the darkness behind her might still reach out and drag her back. She had no one now. Not since her parents had sold her. Clara had once believed love could exist even in poverty, that parents protected their children no matter what. But when the doctor told them she could not bear children, everything changed. Her father's face had hardened that day, her mother had wept, not for Clara's pain, but for the burden she had become. The whispers began in their small town. A barren girl brings no dowry, they said. No man would take her. Her father made sure someone did. The man who bought her was cruel. A miner with calloused hands and a whiskey temper, he treated Clara worse than the horses he owned. Every night, she prayed for the courage to escape, and one bitter dawn, she did. She ran until her feet bled, until the sun disappeared behind white hills. She didn't know where she was going, only that she could never go back. By evening, the storm worsened. The wind whipped her hair into her face as she trudged along the edge of the forest, her body trembling uncontrollably. When she finally fell to her knees, she thought it was the end. Her last thought before losing consciousness was of warmth, of what it might feel like to be held, just once, without pain. When she awoke, everything was still. She wasn't in the snow anymore. She was lying on a bed, soft, warm, and smelling faintly of pine. A fire crackled in the corner, its glow painting the walls golden. She blinked, dazed, her breath shallow. Then she saw him. A man sat near the hearth, sharpening an axe. His shoulders were broad beneath a wool shirt, his beard dark and flecked with silver. His face was rough from years of labor, yet his eyes were gentle, the color of a calm lake. "You're awake," he said, setting the blade aside. His voice was deep, steady. "You nearly froze out there." Clara tried to speak, but her throat burned. Where am I?" "My cabin," he replied. "Name's Samuel. Found you half dead in the snow near the logging road." She tried to sit up, but he raised a hand. "Easy. You're safe now." Safe. The word felt strange, fragile, like glass. She wanted to believe it, but the world had taught her not to trust kindness. Yet there was something in his eyes, not pity, not desire, just quiet decency. "Rest," he said softly, tossing another log into the fire. "You can tell me the rest when you're strong enough." As the flames flickered, Clara let her eyes close again. For the first time in years, she drifted into sleep without fear, the snowstorm outside raging, but the warmth inside holding her like a promise. When Clara awoke the next morning, sunlight spilled through the frosted window panes, casting soft golden light across the small wooden cabin. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was, only the warmth, the smell of wood smoke, and the quiet murmur of children's laughter beyond the door. Then it all came rushing back. The snow, the fall, and the man named Samuel who had carried her from the storm. She sat up slowly, the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. Her head spun, but her body felt stronger than it had in days. As she glanced around, she saw the simple life of a working man, a rough-hewn table, tools neatly arranged on the wall, and a shelf filled with wooden toys and carved animals. Someone had taken care of this place with love. The door creaked open, and 4 small faces peeked in. 2 boys and 2 girls, all with bright, curious eyes. The eldest, a boy of maybe 10, spoke first. "Pa says you're the lady he found in the snow." Clara nodded weakly, trying to smile. "I suppose I am." Behind them stepped Samuel, brushing sawdust from his coat. "All right, little ones, give her space," he said kindly, though there was a hint of amusement in his voice. "Let her eat first." He placed a bowl of hot soup on the table beside her, potatoes, carrots, and bits of venison. The aroma made her dizzy with hunger. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't mention it," he replied, sitting across from her. "Eat slow. You've been through hell." She looked down at her trembling hands. "Why help me?" she asked after a moment. Samuel met her gaze. "'Cause someone once helped me when I had nothing left. Figured it's my turn now." There was no judgment in his tone, no curiosity about who she was or why she'd been wandering alone in the storm. Only quiet understanding, something she hadn't known since childhood. Over the next few days, Clara regained her strength. Samuel worked from dawn to dusk, cutting and hauling timber, while his children played in the snow outside. At night, they all gathered around the fire, the kids sharing stories, Samuel listening with a soft smile, and Clara sewing small patches into worn coats or reading to the little ones from an old Bible she found on the shelf. It was a strange, gentle rhythm, so different from the fear and chaos she had known. One evening, as the wind rattled the shutters, Samuel sat across from her, carving a wooden bird. "You can stay till spring," he said casually, eyes still on his work. Clara hesitated. "You don't even know me." He smiled faintly. "Don't need to. You look like someone who's had too much winter. Maybe you could use a little warmth." Her eyes welled with tears she couldn't explain. For the first time in years, she wasn't treated like a curse or a burden. In this cabin, among strangers who had given her nothing but kindness, Clara began to feel something she thought she'd lost forever. By the time the deep winter thawed into spring, Clara had become part of Samuel's world. The children adored her. She mended their clothes, told them bedtime stories, and sang them lullabies when the wind howled through the pines. The cabin, once quiet and heavy with grief, now echoed with laughter and warmth. Even Samuel, the stoic lumberjack who rarely spoke more than necessary, had begun to smile again. But inside Clara, fear still lingered like a shadow. She had not told him the truth, not about her past, and not about the one thing that had doomed her life before, her infertility. Every night, when the children were asleep and Samuel sat near the fire, she thought of the day her parents had sold her like cattle. She still remembered her father's words, "You're useless to any man." That memory haunted her every time Samuel looked at her with quiet admiration. What would he think if he knew? Would his kindness turn to pity? Would he send her away? One crisp evening, Clara found Samuel outside, splitting logs. The sky burned orange behind the trees, and smoke from the chimney curled lazily upward. "You've done a lot for us," Samuel said, setting the axe aside. The kids laugh again. I'd almost forgotten what that sounded like. Clara smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "They're good children. You've raised them well," he chuckled. "Their ma did most of the raising. I just try not to let them fall off the roof." There was a pause, not uncomfortable, but heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Clara said softly, "You miss her?" Samuel nodded. "Every day. But she'd want me to keep going." She hated silence. He looked at Clara then, really looked, and in that moment, she felt both safe and exposed. Later that night, as the children slept, Clara sat by the fire, twisting her hands nervously. Samuel was whittling again, the sound of the knife against wood soothing and steady. "Samuel," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's something I need to tell you." He stopped carving and looked up. "Go on." "I can't have children," she said quickly, her heart pounding. "That's why my family sold me. That's why I ran. I thought, you should know, before," her voice cracked. "Before you think I'm something I'm not." Samuel was silent for a long time. The fire popped softly between them. Then he set the knife down and leaned forward. "You already have children," he said quietly, his eyes kind. "4 of them. They've loved you since the day you walked in that door. And so have I." Clara's breath caught. "But," he shook his head, "family ain't about blood, Clara. It's about love. And you've given us more of that than I thought we'd ever have again." Tears streamed down her face as he reached across the table and took her trembling hands. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, not for what she lacked, but for who she was. That night, as the firelight danced across their faces, the ghosts of her past finally faded. And in their place, something new took root, a quiet, healing love that no storm could ever break. Spring came to the Montana woods like a gentle sigh. The snow melted from the pine branches, and the air smelled of damp earth and new life. For the first time in years, Clara didn't fear the morning, she welcomed it. The cabin that had once been just a stranger's refuge had become her home. Every day began the same way now, the laughter of children, the crackle of the hearth, and Samuel's deep voice calling the youngest out to feed the chickens. Clara would stand by the window, hands dusted with flour as she kneaded dough, watching them run across the yard. The simple rhythm of life, once foreign to her, now felt like peace. The town nearby had started to whisper again, but this time, not with cruelty. People spoke of Samuel, the lumberjack who'd taken in a lost woman and given her a home. When they saw her in the market, they smiled. Some even called her Mrs. Hayes, though neither she nor Samuel had spoken of marriage. Still, she didn't correct them. The title felt right in her heart. One afternoon, Samuel returned from the logging camp, his face lined with exhaustion. The children rushed to greet him, and Clara handed him a mug of coffee, the steam rising into the cool spring air. "You've been quiet lately," she said softly. He looked at her, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "Been thinking. About what?" "About how a man gets a second chance." He set the mug down and took her hands. "Clara, I lost my wife to sickness, and I thought that was the end of love for me. But you," his voice faltered for a moment. "You brought life back into this place, into me. I don't care about what came before. I just want you here, with us." Clara's heart beat so fast she thought it might burst. "Samuel." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, a wooden ring, carved by hand, smooth and simple. "I ain't got much to give," he said with a shy smile, "but I'd like to give you my name, if you'll have it." Tears welled in her eyes. She nodded, unable to speak, and when Samuel slid the ring onto her finger, the children clapped and cheered, their laughter echoing through the pines. That night, they all sat by the fire, Clara sewing, Samuel carving, and the children curled up beside them. The warmth in the room wasn't just from the flames, but from something deeper, a love that had healed wounds no one else could see. As the last embers glowed, Clara looked around the cabin. The rough wooden walls, the hand-carved toys, the faces of those who now called her Mama. She realized something she never had before. Family wasn't about blood, or perfection, or what you could give the world. It was about finding people who stayed, even when the world didn't. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying away the last ghosts of her past. Inside, laughter filled the air. The girl once sold for being barren had become the heart of a family. The mother, the wife, and the soul of a home built not on birth, but on love. And in the quiet light of the fire, she finally smiled, whole, safe, and finally free.